watching old astronomy fun fact videos while eating reheated Wingstop. Yeah. And before you know it, we start getting to the really scary shit, the heat death of the universe. Essentially, there's this idea that the universe expands so much to the point that it reaches a maximum state of entropy. In other words, no more work can be extracted and no more energy can expand. Stars begin to burn out, galaxies begin to wither, matter begins to decay, and before you know it, the universe itself dies. Kinda like when white folks consume our culture. It should be no surprise that I love my culture, all of the many forms of art that come with it. Black fashion, black cuisine, black dance, black cinema, and most popularly, black music. No matter the decade nor the genre, we've always used music as a cultural mouthpiece, not just for entertainment, but for political expression. Truth be told, these genres were born out of the unique cultural and political conditions that black Americans face. They were created as responses to marginalization, music that communicated pain, joy, defiance, and most importantly, community all at once. It's what differentiates black art forms from being just another genre of music to instead being an integral part of black culture. And this is why it's necessary to acknowledge said systemic conditions, as it's impossible to separate them from the art. A cultural glue, if you will. However, as that art begins to spread globally, that glue becomes a little less sticky. Hip-hop is the most popular genre of music in the world. This is a fact.
Right, so now because hip-hop is the most popular genre in the world, yeah, of course it's no longer going to belong to us anymore. Obviously, it's still us. We're the source of it. But it's, I guess in a sense, it's not a negative thing. It's more the sense of like, it's people's appreciation of it. The appreciation has reached global mass. And so since the appreciation has reached global mass, it's now a point where people think that it doesn't necessarily belong to them, but they're kind of paying just homage to it. And on one end, we have to kind of look at it and be like, yeah, this is cool and it's dope to see that our culture has been able to spread far and wide and everyone is appreciating it and doing their own rendition of it. The only problem is that as we are the ones who created it, we have forgotten what it means to actually have ownership of it. And the majority of people who own the labels that produce rap music, they are not black. Okay? So that's the only downside, is that we should have made more, what can I say? We should have built the foundation that would have allowed us as the black culture to be able to profit off of our own music more than the people who control media do. All I'm going to say on that.
And not one that you can easily dispute. It's the most widespread and profitable in terms of streaming and record sales alone, and its influence can be found bleeding into countless other genres and styles. This is not exclusive to just music either, but fashion, language, and culture. Yet again, showing just how powerful and significant black culture is. Now, some may see this as a beautiful thing. For a culture that was so heavily demonized, it's good to now see it celebrated en masse on a global scale. Who wouldn't love our culture? But this ends up being a double-edged sword. As our culture spreads and takes new forms, it starts to stray away from its original source. This wouldn't be harmful within itself, but when the original source of this culture is a marginalized group, it does more harm than good, as at the end of the day, those that created it aren't given respect. You end up with a world that loves to consume black culture while not loving black people. Did I accidentally say the quiet part out loud? And truth be told, that's how white supremacy works. It dilutes, diminishes, and sanitizes entire cultures, hating the people themselves, but stealing elements from their culture. It's a tale as old as time, a tale that we've had to fight against.
Of course, but this has been happening for all of time. Jazz music, rock music, blues music, country music, all of these all belong to black people. These are pretty much any genre of music that exists is all started by blacks. Okay? All of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of it was all started. And then it was bastardized and essentially turned mainstream by white folks. And then we've yet to see any sort of reparations from it. The music contracts for any sort of artist is always 80-20 in favor of the label. So that's, and you know what? I'm not even gonna be mad at them to be able to see talent and say, you know what, Johnny, or let's make a lot of money off of that. That's going to be great. They took what we had and they made it better. Let's get right in between the money, and that's where we'll get them. And it's, hey, if you're not going to be able to see the opportunity for what it is, somebody else will. That's all I'm saying. I ain't saying that the white man is right. I ain't saying that. I'm just saying that maybe he just had a little bit of hindsight
since we first got here. And best believe, we've put up a fight against that shit. Regardless of the decade or genre, we've always made active efforts to combat the anti-blackness that comes from those that try to consume our art without respecting us. And we'll continue to put up a fight in the form of hip-hop today. But how long can we put up that fight? When the whole world wants a slice of your culture, how long can it remain yours? What happens when hip-hop reaches its heat death?
Battle rappers, they talk too much, saying I can't use the N-word in this battle. My nigga, I just gotta do whoa. You controversial? You get a free motherfucking N-word back.
I'm not a rapper.
I'm an artist, you know. I don't make rap music.
But there's a song that has the N-word. I want you to scream that shit.
Look, guys, can I say the word? Nigga, no, no, Doogie, it was a joke, nigga. Yeah!
You guys say the N-word with me tonight. Play that shit.
Y'all ready for some more scary cosmic shit? Let's throw black culture into the mix. Nigga stellar, if you will. Like jazz, rock, and all that came before, hip-hop is the latest form of black music that the world has sunk its fangs into. But unlike the art of the past, this blood-sucking is more global than ever before. Everyone has their own form of hip-hop, but as this happens, we move further and further away from its black origins. What do we do when that happens? What can we do? When examining the reality of black culture when it spreads across the globe, there exists a very scary and plausible future. A future where in just a few generations, the rest of the world might not even see hip-hop as inherently black anymore. Hip-hop will be so globalized that the rest of the world has completely removed its blackness. So let's dive in, because unlike the universe, hip-hop doesn't have another 30 billion years.
Going up right now, my nigga.
Shit, you black.
Of course I am.
As usual, before we get started, let's establish a few things. This is not another one of those hip-hop is dead videos, reason being, hip-hop is never gonna die. Pretty much for the same reasons we never say the blues is dead, or jazz is dead, or house is dead. The people who gave birth to the art and culture are very much still alive, and as long as said music remains a conduit for telling our stories and lived experiences, the music itself will always be very much alive. In addition, this video is not claiming you can't enjoy hip-hop as a white or non-black person. I can already hear some of you goofy folks that love to deliberately misrepresent an argument in bad faith. According to Pillboy, white people can't love or listen to hip-hop.
I said I didn't like something, and then they was like, nigger, you don't have an opinion. What?
That's not what's being argued. There's plenty of non-black and white fans and artists alike that have genuinely contributed to the culture while simultaneously respecting it. Instead, this video explores some of the negative effects that non-black consumption has on hip-hop. The problem arises when people fall in love with hip-hop culture but refuse to respect the people which it came from. It happens when black art gets exposed to an anti-black world. The anti-blackness allows for the music itself to spread while simultaneously stripping it of its black roots. And when it happens for so long and by so many, it becomes almost impossible to fight back against it. Like jazz, the blues, rock and roll, and many others, hip-hop starts to no longer be seen as inherently black. To do this, let's start by breaking down how exactly black music gets stolen. How is it that our culture, no matter how unique and diverse it may be, always seems to get watered down and copied? Want to find out what laboratory they created Elvis and Eminem in? Well, join me in the black hole.
I mean, Elvis was a talented guy.
Well, okay.
When we talk about black music being stolen, we're talking about the deliberate process of it being dispossessed by its black creators, having its history erased, and then rebranded for white artists. This is nothing new. It's already widely documented how this happened to older black genres such as rock, jazz, and house. However, with hip-hop, its place in this is a bit more disputed. While many of these genres were quickly appropriated in the decades following their birth and golden age, hip-hop at a first glance has seemingly managed to avoid that. The genre is over 50 years old now and still generally considered black. Most of the artists are still black, the language is still black, and any new trend in the culture is still being created by us. How in the world could hip-hop be stolen if we're still the creative driving force behind the culture? Well, that's because stealing black art is a structural process. It's not about isolated acts of copying or cultural appropriation. It happens directly through the systems of white supremacy and capitalism working in tandem. This isn't as simple as quote-unquote who copied who. It's about who profits, who controls, who defines value, and who gets erased. But
Yes, of course. This is what he's saying makes perfect sense. I think, and then you can't turn around and say, okay, well, are black people at fault because they're allowing this to happen? They're not necessarily allowing this to happen. You have to understand that when the point he made at the start, where he said that the marginalized groups, so the young youth that are in the projects or low-income living situations, and they're using rap music as a source to escape the situation, right? The people who are able to control the distribution of media, these record labels, are then seeing, okay, rap music is hot. Let's sign rappers, right? They're just kind of like the distributor. Oh, grunge music is hot. Let's sign grunge artists. So most of the time when you're going to the distributor is allowed to kind of name his price on what it's going to cost to be able to manufacture your actual music and also being able to distribute it. So when it comes down to it, you're going to get the short end of the stick because they're going to be putting up the most amount of money necessary to promote your product, right? So you can't necessarily control how much money the label is going to give you for the music that you're making. So a lot of these youngins, they end up taking bad deals or bad contracts because they want to get out of their poor situation. They want to give back to their families. And so they're going to take the $500,000 advance on a 10 album deal from it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. But when you're in the hands of the person who controls media, this is the hand that you're dealt. Okay. This is the hand that you're dealt. Let's watch just a little bit more of this, and then I'll let you guys watch the rest of the video. I'll link it in the description.
But let's break it down piece by piece. First, the art has to be dispossessed. The music may be born in black communities, but ultimately ownership of said music is denied to us, regardless of if it's jazz in New Orleans, rock in the Mississippi Delta, or hip-hop in the Bronx. Each one of these were born out of the deep social, political, and economic pressure that boiled within these respective communities. However, the minute these art forms become popular, the very same black communities that created them were cut off from structural ownership. Main reason being, we never had any structural power to begin with. This is where that intersection between white supremacy and capitalism comes in, as both of them become the perfect weapons used to deny black ownership in the music industry. White supremacy establishes the founding inequality, organizing power that so black talent can only thrive under white management. Black communities are systemically under-resourced, denied access to not just capital, but legal expertise and educational opportunities. And this in turn translates over to the way black artists have historically done business in the music industry. Early black musicians had no legal protections, no institutional allies, and no generational wealth to lean on. Most of these artists entered their music through oral traditions, local performances, and circuits, rather than conservatories, unions, and publishing houses. As a result, when contracts were signed, they were often done so under duress, legal misunderstandings, or no explanation at all. To top this off, even to the present day, we don't own any of the major record labels to begin with, from the executives who run them to the shareholders and banks that fund them. Even the few record labels that are faced by black people and founded by them, those are not black dollars funding them. The record labels essentially act like cultural sharecroppers, providing quote-unquote advances in exchange for long-term ownership of the fruits of black creativity. It ensures that black artists enter the creative industry from points of vulnerability, where they're economically pressured to sign exploitative contracts or accept predatory management. But this is only one wheel of the machine. At the same time, capitalism has to still commodify the culture. Now, by default, capitalism exploits value wherever it's found. However, with black art, it often ends up being one of the richest veins. The music industry, like all other industries, operates on surplus value, the gap between what we, the laborers, produce and the capitalist profit. For black artists, that disparity is much higher, as the legal protections we lack on a systemic level make it so much easier to exploit and profit off of us. It turns black creativity into cheap labor. It's profitable for the executives that run the show, but rarely to the creators themselves. Ownership of masters, publishing, branding, majority of this is always retained by white-controlled institutions. This includes the record labels themselves, but as well as legal teams and streaming platforms.
Yeah, of course. But this is what I was saying, just my point earlier, and he's refuting my point, is that you're a young kid in the hood using rap as your medium to get out. Yeah, you're getting a bunch of views on YouTube and things of that sort. But once you get now signed to the label, it's like you're getting that short end of the stick. But also, even if you do get a major label contract, what they don't understand is that, let's say you popped off on like YouTube or something, right? Every video you're dropping is getting tens of millions of views independently, right? This is just you and the homies in the hood shooting music videos, blah, 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 recording all this stuff. You don't understand the leverage that you have. It's only up at as of recently now, people are understanding the leverage that they have and they can come to the label with, like people like Young Dolph. But most of the time, a lot of these youngins, they don't understand the leverage that they have. And so what ends up happening is that they can't even understand the contracts that they're signing. And so they're signing these contracts, which they haven't taken to to another lawyer who's able to then look at it and vet it and say, you know what, this is actually a good contract, kid. Go ahead and sign it. No, they're just seeing the dollar signs and saying, yeah, I'll sign for $4 million. And then they sign for $4 million without realizing that the money that the label gives you as an advance is actually a loan that they need to be paid back. But you're not going to be able to pay it back in a substantial amount of time because you're getting such a low percentage of the label deal. Let's say the label takes 80, you take 20% based on streams and this, that, and the fourth. And the labels used to only make money on the records, but now the labels make money on every single piece that goes into creating the artist, which is what they call a 360 deal. And yes, I do know a lot about music, okay? Anyway, guys, I will conclude the video there. If you guys want to watch the rest of the video, I will link it in the description. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later.